Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Catherine with A Perfect Place to Start, and today I have a mega video for you showcasing the best 20 DIYs of 2020. So let's get started. So here's the bookshelf. It is pretty dirty, so I just take a rag and I wipe down the bookshelf and I get the corners and I get all the dust off and I get it ready for painting. I picked up my chalk paint at Home Depot and I thought it was going to be a white color, and it turns out to be a light gray color, which is fine. I was really happy with how it turned out, but I guess my tip number one would be to make sure that you're getting the color of paint that you actually want. It's a good thing I didn't absolutely need a white, because I would have been disappointed. So I'm just going to put a coat of paint over the entire bookshelf, and then I'm going to let it dry for the recommended hour to 2 hours, and then I'm going to come back and give it a second coat of paint. I'm not ready, not just yet. I'm not ready for autumn. Autumn comes too soon. Autumn comes too soon. The light that flares. So once I get both coats of paint onto the bookshelf, I am ready to do some distressing, and I am going to use a technique called wet distressing. So I have a washcloth here that is damp, and I'm just going to rub the washcloth on the pieces of wood, and I'm going to pull off the paint as much as or as little as I want to. As I start to do this though, I realized that I probably let my paint dry slightly too long, and so it took a lot of elbow grease to get off the paint that I was able to get off. I was happy with how it came out, and it did give me the desired look I was looking for. Just, I guess, tip number 2 would be next time to not let it dry quite so long before I get ready to distress it. So I'm going to do the shelf inserts, and then I'm going to do the top of the bookshelf, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the sides and the bottom of the bookshelf as well. Autumn comes too soon. So distressing works best when you have texture, so things with grooves and things like that, it will pull off the paint a lot easier. So I was really happy with how the sides and the bottom of the bookshelf end up turning out. So here's the stencil I'm going to use today. It's a buffalo check stencil, and it's a really large stencil, probably the biggest stencil I have ever used. So I decided to start on the shelves because that's a little less scary, and I just put the stencil at an angle, and I go ahead and start going over it with my ink by Waverly chalk paint. And I'm just going to go ahead and do each of the shelves this way. This was a really time-consuming project to do the stencil, so it just you need to be patient if you're using a large stencil, or any stencil for that matter. I'm just using my Dollar Tree stencil brush that's in the crafter square, so any stencil brush that you have would work. Hide with me, hide with me. So here's our first look at what the pattern is going to look like. I was super happy with how it looked when I took the stencil off, and just really excited to finish the project and see what the final look was going to be. So once I have those 4 shelves finished, I move to the top of the bookshelf, and I'm just using that stencil on the top of the bookshelf as well. I did not put it on top and lay it over the entire top circle. The stencil is a square, so I tried to kind of line up as a rounded part. I might have caused myself more work that way, but I was really happy with how it turned out. So when I move the stencil, I just go ahead and make sure I've overlapped some of the other project so that they match up, and I make sure that I have one continuous pattern through the whole top of the shelf. Wipe my whole we're ready to apply the protective top coat, and I got this at Walmart. Home Depot was out of any kind of wax or protective top coat for chalk paint, so this was the only one I could really find. I don't wind up being very happy with the end result with it. I did follow the directions exactly, using even the right brush it asked me for, and as I'm applying it to my piece, I noticed a little bit too late that some of the black paint is running from adding the coat. So if you have any idea why that happened, I would love to know in the comments below. I end up having to kind of go over it there. As you see, there's some black tint to the coat that I didn't notice, and so I end up having to do some touch-up work a little bit later. But anyway, as I'm applying the protective coat, I just apply it throughout the entire piece of furniture, and then to the bottom and sides as well. As you can see, I did go ahead and do the pattern in the very bottom of the bookshelf. That way you kind of get this floating look when the shelves get put back in there, and it just added a real final look to it, and it just kind of elevated this bookshelf, I thought, once I got all the shelves in. So here's the final look of the bookshelf, and I absolutely love it. It's still in my dining room, still housing my cookbooks, and sometimes I walk by and I'm just amazed that I actually made this. It definitely is one of my favorite things that I made in 2020. So today's video is part of the collaboration for the Best 20 DIYs in 2020. It is being put on by Heidi Samble DIY and Leah Knepp at DIY Beauty on Purpose. So I will link the playlist down in the description box along with these lovely ladies' channels. So when you're done with my video, please make sure you go down and check that out. There is so much wonderful talent in this playlist, and you will definitely get some inspiration. To make a beehive using a Dollar Tree pot and some nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. You're going to need 2 packages of the nautical rope. As you can see in the video, it doesn't quite cover it with one. Once you have covered the whole pot with your nautical rope, we're going to take just a small piece and make it into a circle so that we can make the front of the hive. These rubber fingers I'm wearing came from the Dollar Tree, and they are a lifesaver. I have a super hot glue gun and I'm always burning myself, and these have been a lifesaver today. Once you have it glued on there, you're going to paint the inside with black paint. I'm using the ink by Waverly again, but you can use any acrylic paint for this. We're ready to place our bees on. I'm using Buttons from Hobby Lobby today. I didn't love these buttons, but they were literally the only bee buttons I could find in any store in my area, so we're using these today. They're a bit blingy, but they do turn out pretty cute. Our final step, we're going to take a bow and we're going to glue it to the top. I'm using this buffalo check ribbon that I got at Hobby Lobby. All you're going to do is tie it into a shoelace bow, which is basically a bow that you would do to tie your shoes, and then you're going to glue it to the top. It can be as big or small as you like, and then you're going to dovetail the ends just to give it more of an upscale look. Here's the final look of the beehive, and I think it turned out so cute with the buffalo check and the blingy bees. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to fill in some holes that are on the side of the shutter, and I'm just using some of the filler that I got at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to rub that over the holes and let it dry a little bit. Next, we're going to take that same Waverly white chalk paint and we're going to paint the whole shutter with the paint. I only ended up doing one coat because I was going to go ahead and distress it anyway, so this shutter was just super dirty, and I can't believe how much whiter it became just with that one coat of paint. I really love this paint because a little bit goes a long way, and this bottle of paint has lasted me through several projects. So we are ready for the de-stressing. I'm going to take the antique wax from Waverly, and I'm going to use a rag, and I'm just going to go ahead and rub it all over the shutter. This wax is pretty forgiving. I felt like I did put a little bit too much of it in certain places, and so then I'm just going to go over it again with the Waverly white paint just to tone down what I had done. Next, we're going to take one of those wicker frames from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to take 3 stems of the boxwood that I got at the Walmart, and I'm going to cut those with the wire cutters and then stick them into the wreath. I did go back with some hot glue later to make sure that the stem stayed into the wicker wreath. So here's the final look of the shutter. It was so beautiful in the end, even though it was pretty simple. I love the farmhouse look, and this is definitely one of those DIYs that anyone could do. So if you're new to my channel, I'm Catherine with The Perfect Place to Start, and I love to do seasonal decor, trash to treasure, and budget-friendly DIYs. So if that is something that you're into, I would love it if you hit the subscribe button. I also have an Instagram account under A Perfect Place to Start 78, and I would love it if you came and followed me over there. I tend to share more of my everyday life in my stories and other home decor pictures. And we're just going to take a Dollar Tree picture. It says enjoy the journey, and we're going to take it apart and take out the inside piece. When I was taking this frame apart, I could not get the picture to come out. I was thinking it was one of those that just had like a paper picture on the inside, but it ends up being like a foam piece, like a cardboard piece, and then it's attached to some foam. So you can see as I'm like trying to take it out, it's like stuck to one side of the frame, but I was able to get it out without damaging it. So I'm just going to take off the front part that says enjoy the journey. It's like stuck on with some double-sided tape, and I'm just going to take that off of there and set it aside. I tried to take off all the double-sided tape that was on there, but it was really stuck on good, and I decided it really didn't matter because I'm just going to put some paper on there. So I set it aside, and now I'm going to paint the frame with my Waverly white chalk paint. And I'm only going to give it one coat because I want some of the brown to come looking through there like it's a distressed look. So I'm going to take this piece of scrapbook paper that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going to take that cardboard piece that came out of our frame, and I'm going to trace around it on the scrapbook paper and cut it out. I love using the picture frames at Dollar Tree because you can do so much stuff with them. I have taken calendars from the Dollar Tree and cut them out and framed them for decor pieces when I had extra space in my area that needed to be filled. I've also used gift bags and just anything that had a really fun background to decorate with. So they're really versatile, and only for $1 you can keep using them over and over again. So we're going to take that scrapbook paper that we had, and we're just going to lay it on top of the cardboard piece. There was still some double-sided tape stuck on there, so I ended up just using the tape that was on there to stick the paper onto it. So next we're going to take the piece that we had set aside and we're going to glue it into the middle of our cardboard piece there. And then we're going to take that and just attach it to the frame. I realized when I was putting it back into the frame that you could see some of the brown from the inside of the frame on the outside when I put the picture back in. So I'm going to go back in with my Waverly white chalk paint and I'm going to paint the inside. Some of the paint did get on the glass part, but it can be washed off quickly and it's not a big deal. So if you're painting it and you get a bunch of paint on there, it'll come right off with a wet cloth. This chalk paint has really lasted me a long time. I have been doing projects all summer with this same container of paint, so it does really go a long way. So here it is back in the frame and it looks super cute just like that. If you didn't want to add anything else to it, you wouldn't have to, but I wanted to recreate the beads that were at the top of our Hobby Lobby inspiration piece. So these beads I've had for a little while. I did get them on Amazon, and I start out in the video using a pipe cleaner and I'm just going to put the beads on the pipe cleaner, but I realized when I went to attach it to the frame that you could see some of my pipe cleaner through there and I didn't really want to have the orange showing through. So I go ahead and take them all off the orange pipe cleaner and just use some wire that I had for scrapbooking, and I put the beads on the wire and I think it looks so much better after it gets put on there. So once I get the first bead on the wire, I just get it all the way to the end and then I bend a tiny bit of the wire down kind of across the bottom of the bead, and that way it holds the bead in place and I don't have to put any extra glue on it because I'm going to glue that to the top of the frame anyway. So once I have all my beads in place, I'm just going to glue them to the top of the frame, so on each corner of the frame, and I'm just going to use my hot glue gun. So this was one of my favorite summer decor pieces. I put it in my faux coffee bar and it just looks so cute and the beads add such a fun touch to it. Some wood blocks that we're going to make into a reversible 3-tier decoration. The first step we're going to take is we're going to use our antique wax and we're going to brush it on all 3 of the blocks and then wipe it off just like we did the tray. Next we're going to take some painter's tape and we're going to make lines on 2 of the blocks for the stripes in our flag. I used a piece of tape to measure between pieces of tape so that way I had an even amount between the lines. Next, we're going to take these stars that I got at the Dollar General and we're going to place them on our wood block to make the star part of our flag. I used these stars in a different video for a pennant banner and I'll link that in the description box if you missed it. Next, I'm just using some red and blue acrylic paint that I got at Walmart and I'm going to paint the star part blue and the stripe part red. Next, I'm going to remove the tape and the stars. We're going to make these blocks reversible, so next we're going to turn them over and we're going to use the stickers that they have at the Dollar Tree and we're going to put USA on the back of those blocks. Next, we're going to paint one block blue, one block red, and one block white. It doesn't matter what kind of paint. I'm using acrylic paint here. You could use chalk paint if you wanted to. It's really up to you. Once I peeled the letters off, I didn't feel like you could see them very well, so I took the ink chalk paint by Waverly and I just went over them again so they stood out more. The last step to these blocks is to use our sandpaper again and go over them so they have a nice distressed look. These were definitely one of my most favorite DIYs from the summertime. I just really love the rustic look of them and they gave such an Americana feel, and I love Americana during 4th of July. So we're going to follow these same steps to do the next picture, and I took the picture part that was in the frame out, traced my scrapbook paper, cut it out, glued it onto the square, and then I'm going to paint this circle white as well with the white Waverly chalk paint. So I'm measuring here to find the middle of the circle so that when I put the boo face on, I can make sure it's in the center. And then I'm just doing some touch up around there, and then I'm going to use the same twine and tie a little bow at the bottom of the ghost, and then I'm going to go around the edges with the black paint again and then glue it onto the board and stick it back into the frame. Here's the ghost, and he was definitely one of my favorite vintage Halloween decor ideas this year. I picked up this unfinished wood snowman in the Christmas section at Hobby Lobby. He was priced at $6.99. He was 40% off. All of their Christmas stuff right now is 40% off. I'm going to unattach this jute string that is being used as a hanger, and then I'm going to set that aside and use it at a later date. And then I'm just going to paint the entire snowman white. So once I have the piece painted, I'm going to use this ribbon roll that has this kind of cute flower design, and I'm going to trace that for the inside of my donut hole. So I'm going to start painting my donuts, and my top donut is painted with hazelnut Waverly chalk paint, and then the bottom donut is painted with cashew Waverly chalk paint. I do go ahead and give my donuts a couple coats of paint so that there's no white showing through, and then I'm going to draw the icing onto my donuts. And I'm just using a pencil to go around lightly to draw a design that would look like icing. As I start drawing the icing on, I realize that I want the icing to look like it's underneath the top donut, and then the top donut to be underneath the head of the snowman. So I just go back and erase the top part of the icing and just kind of draw it back in to look like it's sitting under each of those sections. This project really got me in the mood for Christmas, and I don't know how anyone else is feeling, but this has been a hard year, and Christmas is such a fun time of year. I'm just ready to skip over everything, put up my Christmas tree, and celebrate Christmas and have just the fun, cozy parts of Christmas around my house. So I'm ready to paint on the frosting, and so I'm using Antique Wax by Waverly to do the chocolate frosting on the first donut, and then I'm using a crimson chalk paint from Folk Art to paint the frosting onto the bottom donut. And it does take me a couple coats of the Antique Wax to give it a nice chocolatey look. When the bell on the door jingled once more, and then time almost came to a stop, but somehow I knew, and maybe so did you. While I'm letting that dry, I go ahead and paint the hat of the snowman black, and then I'm going to go ahead and do some distressing on that. And I realized after I painted the frosting on the donut that I should have done some distressing on the donuts themselves, so I do go back and do some distressing over the donuts and the frosting and the hat of the snowman. So for my distressing, I find it works best for a kind of worn out, hard bristled brush, and I put in the paint on my brush and then I wipe it out as best as I can, and I'm just using a napkin here. Paper towel works better than a napkin, but the napkin was all I had. So I just wipe it out really good on the napkin, and then I paint over whatever the surface is that I'm painting. So, and then you can do as much or as little as you like, and you can just keep adding to it, and then the different strokes that it puts in there gives it a really nice look when you're all finished. And somehow we knew that we'd find something true, and that everything would change from now on. Yes, from this Christmas on. From this Christmas
from this Christmas on. From this Christmas on, it's gonna be you and me decorating the tree. From this Christmas on, from this Christmas on.
So I am ready to add my sprinkles, and these are just some confetti that I picked up from Hobby Lobby in the Christmas area, and I also used my coupon for those. Or actually it's not a coupon right now, everything's 40% off in the Christmas area. And then I'm just using some Mod Podge, and I'm paint on the Mod Podge, stick on the confetti, and then I go over it all together one more time with Mod Podge on top. So I'm ready to paint on my snowman's face, and I'm just going to use the end of my foam brush. I dip in the end of my foam brush into the black paint, which is ink by Waverly, and then I just put two of the circled end parts together to make my two eyes.
And my hope begins to grow. Been staring out my window, looking for a sign, something to remind me of the place I left behind. My time of the year. There's a feeling I remember.
So I'm going to take my light pink folk art chalk paint, and I can't remember the name of it, so I will find it and I will put it in the description box. But I'm going to put some paint on my brush, wipe it out really good, add some white paint to that, and then I'm going to go ahead and add it to the snowman as his blush.
We would run around the big house where your cousins used to live, and we do lots of things I know our folks would not forgive. My time of the year.
Next I'm going to take my pumpkin chalk paint by Waverly, and I'm just going to take a thin brush and paint on a little nose for my snowman.
I could wash my hands, but still would relive my past. My time of the year. My time of the year.
Next I'm going to put the kind of eyeballs, I guess you would say, into my snowman's eyes, and I'm just using the end of a paintbrush again, and I'm going to dip it into the white and add those to the sides of the snowman's eyes to give him his pupils. The last thing we're going to add to his face is his mouth, so I'm again taking a smaller paintbrush and I'm using the end and I'm just dipping it back into that black paint and adding a few dots along to make his smile.
Come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. Come, let us adore him.
He looks so cute. So just to add some final touches, I decided to add a bow instead of a scarf. So I have this plaid ribbon. I'm just going to kind of do an accordion bow and wrap a middle piece around to cover up the middle accordion, and then I'm going to dovetail the ends of it to give it kind of a higher end look, and I'm going to glue it to kind of the side of the snowman's neck.
Sing choirs of angels, sing in exultation, sing all ye citizens of heaven above. Glory to God in the highest, come let us adore.
This is wired ribbon, so a lot of times when you work with wired ribbon, you just have to keep playing with it and fluffing it and pulling it until you get it to look the way that you want it to look. And so that's kind of what I'm doing here, is just kind of pulling it and flipping it out and twisting it so I can get it to look just like I want it to look. Here's the final look of the donut snowman, and I think he turned out adorable. I think the donuts look so real, and he just has such a cute look about him. First, we're going to start with these ceramic pumpkins that I picked up at Hobby Lobby, and I just went ahead and drew on the hairline to the ladies from Hocus Pocus. We're going to start by painting their faces, and then we'll move on to their hair. So we finished the faces and we're ready to move on to the hair, and so the pumpkin stem is going to just be painted as part of their hair. So I'm just going to paint that the same color that their hair would be. And I will put in the description box all the paint colors that I used today, along with all the supplies needed to make this project. So Hocus Pocus is one of my favorite Halloween movies. Do you have any favorite Halloween movies? Let me know in the description box if there's some movies that you like to watch every year, or if you're into scary movies or just fun, happy Halloween movies. So we're ready to do some dry brushing, and I'm using the maize color from Waverly chalk paint to do the dry brushing for the blonde hair. I do end up doing like several coats of it. I finally just end up painting a coat of the blonde onto the top of the brown. It just wasn't giving it enough blonde color to look like it was blonde hair. So once I painted the actual coat of paint over the top of it, it looked much better. So I don't even know if you really need the brown paint under there, but I was going for a contrasting blonde color. But next we're going to take a silver and we're going to just randomly go around the black hair to give it that silvery look that she has with it going through her hair. And for this one, I'm just taking some orange chalk paint and I'm going over the top of the red to give it that more orangey red color that she has in her hair. So I use these same ceramic pumpkins in another project, and I'll post that here. But these have been really fun to work with this year. I picked them up at Hobby Lobby using the 40% off, and they just have been a lot of fun to work with. Here's the final look of their heads. I think it turned out so cute with their hair, and the stem just makes it look like they have some hair piled on top of their heads, and so I tried to make sure that I painted them in different directions. That way all the stems wouldn't be pointing in the same way. Next we're going to take a block of wood, and I'm just going to take some black chalk paint, and I'm going to paint over the entire thing with this black paint. Next, I'm just taking some sandpaper that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going over all of it to give it the distressed look. Thanks for watching today. If you're liking today's video, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up, made a comment, or even shared it so other people could watch it. It really helps my channel grow. So we're almost done distressing this piece of wood, and I do go ahead and add a piece of vinyl to the front that says Hocus Pocus. I didn't get the footage of that being put onto the piece of wood, but I did cut it out with my Cricut. I have an older Cricut, so I don't have the Design Studio, I just have the cartridges, and so I just used one of the fonts that I had to cut out the words in like a fancy script. So these Hocus Pocus pumpkins were definitely one of my most unique projects for the year. I loved how the pumpkins turned into their heads, and it just definitely screamed Hocus Pocus to me. This is a 2x4 that my husband had cut into various sizes for a different project, and I'm just using what was left of it, and I'm using the same process for the mop. So I took it apart, and then I'm going to glue those wood pieces to the top for the stem, and then I'm going to start wrapping the mop around the piece of wood, and I'm just going to do this all the way till I cover this entire piece of wood. So again, this is one of those projects you're going to want to watch TV or listen to a book, because it is a little bit time consuming but not hard. You're just going to wrap it around and glue. And if you haven't picked up the silicone fingers at the Dollar Tree, they are a lifesaver, because you are going to have to be kind of smoothing this mop down as you go around, and so these will keep your fingers from getting burnt from the hot glue. But I made sure I pushed them real close together on the wood so that you wouldn't see any of the wood showing through behind. If you were worried about having any kind of wood grain coming through the mop, you could always paint your wood white first. I didn't see it necessary, and you cannot tell at all after I am finished with the project. So that is, I guess, a personal preference. But again, you're just going to wrap and wrap and wrap until you get to the bottom of the project, and then you are going to repeat that 2 other times if you want a set of 3 pumpkins.
First choice, just as it seems. So I left the house broken. I walked this dirty streets for years. I left it all to see you, to wipe my rolling tears.
we're ready to take that twine again and loop it around, and then we're going to tie it around the top of the stem again, and then just cut those loops and trim so that you get a really cute rustic vine looking thing at the top.
Hide with me, hide with me, hide with me. The sun is up, the clouds are gone, but I'm still here with wounds on my feet. Where will you be? If I left the house broken, I walked this dirty streets for years. I left it all to see you, to wipe up all your
Here are the other two pieces of wood. I'm just going to do the exact same thing that I did before to make a group of 3. So these pumpkins definitely screamed farmhouse to me. I loved the gray and white that they had, and I thought they were a nice fall transitional piece. And I'm just going to cover the entire thing with white Waverly chalk paint. So I have a thing for decorating with vintage Halloween things, or just more like classic old looking Halloween things, and I felt like these two signs really fit into that aesthetic. We're ready to use the stencil, and this stencil also came in the folk art pack that was the holiday pack, and it's actually like a 12 by 12 stencil, and I just cut it down because I wanted the face to fit inside the sign along with the letters boo. This 12 by 12 piece also has another pumpkin face that goes with it and the words that say eek. So I'm going to take my sanding block that I got at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to go over this entire sign with the sanding block. The purpose is to make it look aged and to give it a distressed look. I'm going to go over it with the Antique Waverly Wax to fill in the parts where I distressed to give it an even more aged look. So it's ready for the antique wax, and I'm just going to use my paintbrush, brush it on, use my rag, and wipe it off. So I love vintage Halloween, and this sign just really said vintage to me. I loved the look of his face and the boo with it, and it just really went great with my Halloween decor. So for our next project, we're going to take this Easter sign and we're going to take off the feet and the raffia bow that's being used as his bow tie. And we're also going to remove the hanger, but we're going to hold on to the hanger because we're going to use that later in the project. Next I'm going to find the middle of the sign because I'm going to be measuring it into a diagonal because we're going to make this sign into a pencil. And so I also don't want the holes to be at the bottom of the sign, so I'm measuring so that when I cut it off, I'm going to end up cutting off those holes that were the hanger part. Next I'm going to take my razor blade and I'm just going to go along that line that I drew there. I just am really scoring this sign so that it'll eventually pop off. It was a little bit harder. I tried to use my X-Acto knife first and I couldn't get the X-Acto knife to cut it very well, so that's why I switched to the razor blade. But it takes me a couple times to score the line and then eventually the sign does pop off. I don't show it in the video, but I do sand those edges just to get any kind of rough parts off and to make sure that it has kind of a smooth edge there. And then I'm taking my ruler again and I'm going to start to draw the pieces of the pencil. So down here at the bottom, I'm just sort of measuring where the yellow part of the pencil will end and the lead part would begin. And I'm just going to draw a straight line across there. And then I'm going to measure the line for the lead, and I'm just going to draw a straight line across for that as well. Next I'm going to turn this sign over and I'm going to measure out a piece for the eraser, and then I'm going to measure out a piece for the metal part that goes between the eraser and the pencil. I didn't have any specific measurements for how far down I went. I was just kind of guessing at what I thought would make a good amount for an eraser and the metal part. So it really is up to you. I think it ended up being about 2 inches for each one of those things, but you could make it bigger or smaller, however you desire to do that. So I'm ready to start painting, and I'm using chalk paint for my entire sign. If you didn't have chalk paint, any acrylic paint would work just as well. You need a pink, some kind of silver gray color, a yellow, and then I used cashew for the wood part of my pencil, but that is up to you, and then black for the lead part. I will list in the description box below the exact colors that I used for my sign. And then once I go over all of the sign with the chalk paint, I go back with a Sharpie and I draw in the lines to show where the eraser would be, where the metal piece would be, and the pencil, and so on. And then once I've done that, I go back and I add some white paint to the colors that I use, and I do some dry brushing over each of the different colors to give it some dimension. I really like how the silver part turned out. And then I take those same stickers from the Dollar Tree, and I'm spelling out my kids' names because this is their markers for their seats for our homeschool station. And then I'm going to go over the entire sign with Mod Podge just to make sure that my stickers stay, and I wanted my whole sign to have the same look. So, and then I turn my sign over and I'm going to paint the back of my sign with some Waverly white chalk paint. It just gives it a nice finished look and you can't see the Easter sign. And then I'm going to take that hanger that we cut off earlier and I'm going to attach it to the back so that we can hang it up at our homeschool station. So I just loved how this sign turned out. I actually made 2 of them, one for each of my kids to sit in our homeschool station. So here's the original look of the table. Like I said, I paid $6 for it and it's this kind of weird pinkish orange color. And I'm going to go ahead and use the chalk paint that I picked up at Home Depot, and it is in a platinum ring color, and I'm going to paint the entire table this platinum ring. I end up giving it about 2 to 3 coats to cover all of the color that was already there, and you'll see later in the video that I decided to do something different to the top of it. So but for now it's just being painted this platinum ring.
Sparkly shimmer on our skin, restoring everything within. Oh, dreamy, breezy we go, easy, easy on our tiptoes, undercover agents of the
So I'm ready to do just some distressing, and I'm just using regular sandpaper and I'm going along the edges and the corners to give it that aged look.
Building castles out of sand, reaching for the grand. As willows align, we lose track of time.
I'd like to thank all my subscribers for subscribing and watching, and all the wonderful comments that I've been getting on my videos. It's so nice to see that people love what you're doing and that it's bringing joy and inspiration to other people. So thank you for that. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, consider doing that, or give me a thumbs up if you like today's video, and it really helps my channel grow.
Beyond gravel, beyond a bigger scale, the world inhales as we go. I wouldn't want it any other way.
So after all the work I did with the platinum ring color and sanding it down for distressing, what I had put on top of it I did not like, and there was some black in it, and so I just decided to go ahead and paint the entire top of this table black. So what I'm doing here is adding a second coat, and I am actually just using Waverly ink chalk paint for the top of this, and so I'm just painting it on, and this is my second coat covering up some holes that there were in the platinum part that's coming through.
Undercover agents of the other, beyond gravel, beyond all.
So I decided to use my electric sander this time to do the distressing, and it turns out so much better, and I will be doing this from now on. But I go ahead and I do distressing over the entire table, and then I'm going to use this stencil that I picked up at Hobby Lobby, and it's a designer series large stencil that they sell there. And if you watched my other furniture flip video where I did the buffalo check bookshelf, it was also one of those designer series large stencils. So I just really like them. They have like a really neat pattern over there, and there's several that you can choose from. So again, I got it at Hobby Lobby.
Soon they'll be falling down. Not now, I'm not ready. Not just
So we're ready to take the stencil off, and there's something so satisfying about peeling it up and seeing what's underneath.
autumn comes too soon. Autumn comes too soon. The line.
So we're ready to put the protective coat on top, and I'm using the one from Rust-Oleum, and I'm just going to paint it over the entire top and legs of this table.
All that blossomed will wither away and die. Not now.
So I had so much fun flipping this table, and I just absolutely loved how it turned out. I was originally going to get rid of it, and then I loved it so much it ended up staying in my dining room. I'm using those flatter pine cones that you can pick up. You could also use the bigger pine cones and glue them just a different way around the wreath. I'm just going to go in a circular motion here, and I'm just going to glue them end to end all around the wreath form, and I'm going to do that on each side. Project is kind of messy, so make sure if you're doing this at home that you have some paper down or something so it's easy cleanup. So I have 4 rings of pine cones here. I have one on the inside, one on the outside, one on the middle, and then I glued pine cones on top of that inside ring, and so now I'm just going to go around and glue pine cones on the outside ring to give it a fuller look. We're ready for a bow, and I was looking for more of a simple bow today because I didn't want to take away from the beauty of the pine cones, and so I kind of just reconstruct this bow from pieces of Dollar Tree burlap ribbon, and then that same red and white striped ribbon that I picked up at Dollar General. And so I'm just going to glue the bow part onto the parts that hang down from the bow, and then I took the red and white striped ribbon and I wrapped it around the burlap ribbon bow part and glued it down to kind of go like to give it a stripe in the middle. And then I'm just going to take a smaller piece of that striped ribbon and go around the middle of the bow, and then glue another one of those pearls into the middle of the bow. I kind of play around with the bow and decide that I want to put it at the bottom. I just think it just looks so much prettier there, and then you get the full effect of the beauty of the pine cones. So what really made me love this project was just really the simplicity of it. I love the natural look. and this snowy look, and then it just really went well with this simple bow with just some burlap and red and white. So I'm starting out with white, and I'm just going to paint this 4x4 with one coat of Waverly white chalk paint. I picked up these ceramic pumpkins at Hobby Lobby. They were $4.99 each. I picked up 3 of them. They were 40% off, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove the tags, and then I'm going to go ahead and start painting them with my chalk paint. So I start out painting the stem, and I'm using hazelnut chalk paint by Waverly, and then I'm going to dry brush on top of that cashew by Waverly. And then the first pumpkin I'm going to start out with the elephant gray chalk paint from Waverly, and I'm just going to give these ceramic pumpkins one coat, and then I'm going to go back over and dry brush with steel chalk paint from Waverly. I was a little worried when I started dry brushing that it was a lot lighter and it kind of looks like white, but as it dries it gives it a really nice color on top of that. I go ahead and move on to my other 2 pumpkins, and I'm just painting those stems with the same hazelnut and cashew colors, and then I'm going to pick up the second pumpkin and I'm going to start painting it my green color. I will list in the description box below all the paint colors that I used for this project. So I go ahead and start distressing this pumpkin, and I'm going over it with a sage color, and at first I was really worried again that it was too light, but after it dries it turns out to be a really pretty color. And then for my third pumpkin I'm decided to do blue. Blue is a really popular color this year for fall, and I've done a few other projects and I just really love how the blue kind of goes with the fall colors. So I go ahead and give that a dark undercoat and then a lighter coat of blue on top. Now that the pumpkins are set off to the side drying, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my wood block, and I'm using some sandpaper, and I'm just going to go over the entire wood block and distress it and pull off some of that paint. I'm not sure if I'm using the wrong kind of sandpaper today because the paint just didn't seem like it wanted to come off very well, but I go ahead and I spend some time and I go over the entire block to make sure that I have sanded off what I want to come off. Once I have that all sanded, I'm going to take my antique Waverly wax and I'm going to paint it onto each section of this wood block. After I get it painted on, I just take a rag and I wipe it down and get all the excess off, so it gives it a nice aged look, and you get that kind of antique farmhouse look. I am now ready to attach my harvest sign that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I'm using some hot glue and I'm just putting it in random areas on my sign to get it to stick to the wood. I do have some difficulty getting it to stick on there with the hot glue, and my friend Nadia over at DIY with Nadia was using one of these signs in one of her latest videos and was using super glue, and I thought that probably would be a better idea to glue this on there with than the hot glue, because part of it didn't want to stick on there and I had to go back, and they're just so thin. So just an idea, if you're going to use these signs and you're gluing them onto something, I'm thinking that the super glue is the best bet.
There was sun and there was rain, beauty in the mundane. And as the light startled our eyes, we let go of disguise. And now there's something in the air and a sparkly shimmer on our skin, restoring everything within. Oh, dreamy, breezy, we go. Easy, easy on our tiptoes, undercover agents of the other, beyond gravel, beyond all. Hand in hand, building castles out of sand, reaching for the grand. As willows align, we lose track of.
So blue was definitely my favorite color for fall this year, and I just really love how these colors complemented each other so well. They were pretty non-traditional, but they just looked so beautiful together. A Tabasco basket, a tree, and some picks from the Dollar Tree, and some white paint. So we're going to start out with our Dollar Tree Christmas tree, and all we're going to do is fluff it out and make it thicker. So we're just about done fluffing out our tree, and then we're going to flock our tree with some white Waverly paint, and I'm going to use the same technique through all three projects today, but I'm only going to show it here this one time. So I'm just going to take the paint and brush it all over the tree, and now we're ready to attach our tree onto the Tabasco basket. I'm just using a zip tie today, and I'm just going to pull it tight through those two holes so that the tree does not move around on the basket. I forgot to mention that I got this Tabasco basket at Hobby Lobby when it was like spring and they had their sale, and I think I only paid about $3 for this basket, so it was actually a pretty good deal. They had a whole bunch of them on sale. So I'm taking some Dollar Tree berries and I'm just gluing them into the tree, and I'm going to do that with the pine cones as well.
The love I lived, the dream I knew. Well, I'm all for Christmas. It's a magical time full of kisses. Take a walk outside and tickle the snowman's nose.
Don't forget to check out the playlist today. That's down in the description box so you can see everyone's Christmas DIYs who participated in today's challenge.
I will keep you warm as soon as you remove that snow. Oh, whatever we do, we will be alright. These holiday wonders will open your mind. May all your wishes tonight come true. The love I lived, the dream I knew. This Christmas, I only wanna be close to you.
So we're ready to add the bow, and I'm just adding a already pre-made bow that I picked up at Dollar General last year, and I'm just going to attach it right to the Tabasco basket using the tie that came with the bow.
Can't believe it's been a year. Riding through the winter night.
I absolutely loved everything about this project. The bow really tied it all together, and I just loved the Christmassy feel of it. Today I picked up some buttons at the Dollar Tree, and you end up needing about 3 containers of buttons to do this pumpkin. And I go ahead and remove the top again, and then we're just going to take the buttons and glue them all over randomly onto the pumpkin. I realized later that I probably should have painted this pumpkin as well with the white Waverly paint. I didn't think it would be a big deal because I'm going to spray paint it later, but I realized that there ends up being some little nooks and crannies that you can kind of see the orange through, and I had to use a lot of extra spray paint. So if you're going to recreate this pumpkin, probably painting it ahead of time would be a better idea. But you're just going to randomly glue the buttons all over, and I did go ahead and glue some of them overlapping others, so it gave it some texture and some different look as it goes around the pumpkin.
Sometimes we're crashing down.
So here we are after 1 container of the buttons, and I just started gluing some of those smaller ones on top of the other ones, and now we're going to start container number 2.
I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind. I will keep on.
So here it is after container number 2, and we're just about finished covering it. So it doesn't actually take a full 3rd container unless you wanted to glue more on top of other buttons throughout the pumpkin. You could totally use the entire container. I was honestly getting tired, so I just decided to stop where I ended up stopping. But you could use the entire container and just go back around and fill in the holes in the pumpkin if you wanted to.
Even if the sky is falling down, even if the sky is falling down, yeah. The sky is falling down. Yesterday there was sun and there was rain, beauty in the mundane. And as the light startled our eyes, we let go of disguise.
So once I get all the buttons glued onto it, I go outside with some white spray paint, and I'm going to cover the entire pumpkin with some white spray paint. And then I decide to go over it with some pink spray paint, but then I don't really like how that looks, so I go back over it with some more white paint. And it takes me about 3 or 4 coats of the spray paint to really cover all the buttons and to make sure that I've covered all of the orange part of the pumpkin. So once we have the spray paint all on our pumpkin and it's totally covered, we're ready to add the stem, and I'm just using some of those wood stems again from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to add 2 here for some height.
Hand in hand, building castles out of sand, reaching for the grand. As willows align, we lose track of time. Head up high, now we climb.
I'm ready to add a bow, and at first I was going to try to use this burlap ribbon, but I decided I didn't like it. So I have this kind of off-white colored ribbon that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I just cut some strips of it, tie it onto the stem, and then I tie a little shoelace bow to go in the front to give it that shabby chic look. And then I take some of the pearls from the Dollar Tree and I just glue them randomly all around the pumpkin to go along with that shabby chic look. This shabby chic pumpkin was definitely a subscriber favorite, and I had quite a few comments on how much people love this pumpkin. So the first thing we're going to create is the Be Kind sign. I'm just recycling a sign I already had at home, and so I'm going to remove these metal hearts, and then I'm going to paint it with Waverly white chalk paint, and I'm going to do the whole board including the sides. So I'm going to take these folk art stencils that I got at Walmart, and I'm going to use the Beehive stencil, and I'm just going to lay that on my board and cover the whole board with this Beehive stencil. So I'm using the yellow chalk paint, which I believe the color is called Corn, and I'm just going to use that over the whole board with this stencil. I did use the stencil on the sides and ends of the board as well, so it looks like it kind of wraps around it. It does end up being a little bit time consuming, but it's so cute when it's finally finished. So next I'm going to take some Waverly stencils that I got at Walmart, and I'm just going to spell out the word kind. I measured them because I cut out the stencils to make sure that they were even when I put them on the board. And then I'm just going to use my Waverly black chalk paint, which the color is ink, and I'm going to go over those letters, and then I like to fill in the letters so they look like one giant letter instead of having the gap. So I just go back with a smaller brush and fill in those lines. Next I got this super cute bee stencil from Amazon, and I'm just going to use that Waverly ink chalk paint again, and I'm going to go over the stencil in different directions for the bees along the rest of the sign. Then I'm going to take a Sharpie and I'm going to draw some little lines to connect the bees. It doesn't show it in the picture, but I do go through the words, and there is bees on the other side of kind that it connects to. So now for our last step, we're going to take some sandpaper and we're just going to go over the whole thing. When in the video it looks like my paint is smearing, but it's actually just the sand coming off. When I blow it off, you cannot see it smearing between the letters. Another great thing to give it a distressed look would have been to go over it with the Waverly wax again. I was just worried that it would give it too much of a brown look, and I wanted to make sure that you could still tell that it was a beehive behind there. So I absolutely loved bees this summer, and this sign was just definitely one of my very favorite things that I made. Project, we're going to be making this really cute snowman tree, and we're using the same party hat that we used in the first one with the same steps with the white chalk paint and gluing it together. And we're just going to take these pom-poms from the Dollar Tree and glue them all over this party hat. I have 4 bags shown in the picture for the supplies, but I ended up needing 2 extra bags when I finally got this project all finished. So you're going to need altogether 6 bags of these white pom-poms. There are 80 pom-poms in each bag, so that is 480 pom-poms that get glued to this party hat. So it does seem kind of like a lot, but I promise you this went pretty fast. I just kind of watched TV and glued them on together, so you can do it. Your kids could do it. This would be a fun project to do with kids as well. I realized while I was making these trees that they could actually be tree toppers because they're so wide in the hat, and so I think that I'm going to use this snowman tree as my tree topper this year. Once you have them all on there, we're just going to take this snowman head ornament that I picked up at the Dollar Tree and we're going to glue his head to the top of this tree. So I put a lot of glue on his head and I was worried it was going to drip down into the pom-pom, so I was just really like holding on to it for dear life that the glue did not go down into the pom-poms, but it did not. So if you're doing that, make sure maybe to lay it on its side when you go to glue his head on. So we're ready to glue his buttons on, and we're just going to glue 3 buttons that I had left over from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to glue those to the front of his body. When I originally planned to make this tree, I wasn't really going to make him into an actual snowman, but once I got his head on there, I thought he actually needs to be a snowman. So in the supply list, I don't have the buttons and his scarf and his arms listed in the supplies, but everything did come from the Dollar Tree. So his scarf is ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and then 2 brown pipe cleaners that I also picked up at the Dollar Tree. So I wanted his scarf to match his hat, so I took this red and black buffalo check ribbon that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I decided it was too thick to make into a scarf, so I just folded it in half and glued it together to make a skinnier scarf. So we're ready to assemble our snowman, and I just go ahead and crisscross the scarf in the front of him and then glue it together and make his little arms and glue a button in the middle of his scarf. So this snowman tree turned out absolutely adorable, and he was so fun to make. He was definitely the fan favorite out of this video. I picked up this bag and the Santa letters at the Dollar General. So we're going to take that same filler that we used in the first project, and we're going to use this in this project too. When I got this bag all undone and ready to put together, I did not realize how big it actually was, and I did not want to stuff it all with the stuffing. So instead I took some Walmart and like shopping bags, and I just took all the ones I had at home and I stuffed them into the bottom of this bag to take up some of the space, and then at the top of the bag is where I end up putting the stuffing, the batting. This is such an easy project to assemble together, and when I asked my family after I put up all of our Christmas decorations what their favorite decoration was in our house, this is the one they chose. And I have to admit, it is very cute, but I was kind of surprised that this, out of all the decorations we have, was their favorite. So now we're to the top of the bag, and all we're going to do is put that stuffing in there, and then I'm going to take those letters that I picked up at Dollar General, I'm going to glue them together, and I'm going to stick them to the top of the bag. So this project was so simple but so cute and was just loved by so many people. In fact, it was my family's favorite DIY of Christmas. And I'm going to start out by painting these beads that I picked up from Amazon. I'm going to paint them green and red, and then I'm going to leave one of the beads a natural color, the natural bead color. I will list in my description box all the paint colors and supplies I used for the DIYs today, and I will link those beads down there as well. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take some batting that I also got at Walmart, and I'm going to stuff these gift card holders that I picked up at Walmart as well. And I have 3 of the cream colored bags and 3 of the red bags. And I'm just going to stuff them so that it looks like they are full of mail. Next, I'm going to take these gift card holders that I also picked up at Walmart, and I'm just going to place one of the gift card holders into each bag to make it look like the mail is coming out of the bag. These natural brown colored gift tags, I actually wrote my family's names on the outsides, so it looks like it's their mail. You could either do that, or if you didn't want to write any names, you wouldn't have to. These particular gift cards had a big space there in the middle, so I wanted to go ahead and write something. The red bags are going to get these red and white gift card holders, and they're going to stick into the bag just the same way as the cream one, and it's going to be sticking out like there's a bag full of mail. And I'm just using my hot glue gun, and I'm gluing like the corner of the gift tag onto the bag to make sure that it stays in place, and then I'm cinching the bag together just to give it another extra tightness in there. Next, I took my jute twine and I just knotted it several times there and made a loop, so in case I wanted to hook it onto something when I hung it up. And then I've cut ribbon into strips, and this ribbon came from the Dollar Tree, and all I'm going to do is cut the ribbon in half to give it a smaller strip for when I go to tie it around the jute twine. So we're ready to assemble our banner, and I'm just using this a little pattern that I came up with. So I have a colored bead, a piece of the ribbon, another colored bead, a piece of the burlap, the plain bead, another piece of the ribbon, and then the red bead, and I just followed that pattern, and then I glue on one of the bags. It's totally up to you what kind of pattern you want to go with. If you're recreating this at home, you would not have to do my pattern. I just wanted to have alternating colors. And so when I went to glue my bag on, I accidentally glued one of the bags to the front instead of the back, and so I have like some excess glue there. So I just decided to go ahead and add a simple little bow out of that same burlap ribbon with the polka dots onto the cream colored gift bag. So we made it to our #1 project of 2020, and this banner did not disappoint. I loved how cute it looked in my living room. I have a huge Santa display, and it totally went so well in my dining room. I'm so glad you guys stayed with me through this video. Thank you so much for being a part of my best 20 DIYs of 2020. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I would love it if you went down and hit that subscribe button. And as always, wherever you are in your journey is a perfect place to start. And I will see you guys in the next video.